Hey, are you looking for a career or for some insights on how to guide your career? Well, I'm going to bring some insights now from Scott Adams, King Solomon, John D. Rockefeller, and me. So, Scott Adams came down in his book How to Win Bigly on the concept of a skill set, or we used to call it a skill set too. But we're going to talk about that. But wait, there's more. But please click like and subscribe and share if this is helpful to you. So we're gonna start into this. It's gonna be um, some of the thoughts. I think some insights, but hopefully they'll be related to each other well enough that you can understand. So for someone as a believer in our churches, if you're looking for a job or a career, you might find someone talking to tell you that there's something that your gift. I call it the "It's Your Gift" scan. Maybe they focus upon some minor skill which they may have seen you do once and they thought you're doing a good job, and they are just simply a talkative, pushy, manipulative person. They want to call you that gift, and I do a hobby of photography from time to time. I've been kind of on the outside on it for a little while, but someone tried to say, "Well, that's your gift." Tried to push me into wedding photography, but looking at where my skills actually were proven over time, that nice hobby, nice supplement, but not where I wanted to be, not where I believed that God was leading me. And it's a simplistic way, which you'll probably find others will try to stereotype, pigeonhole, manipulate you. Happens within the church way too much, happens in our lives sometimes. It's a way of conceited, overly talkative people, sometimes even Christians, and they way overestimate when they see you doing something once, small bits of information, and they ignore the complexity, depth, and extent of making real life decisions, especially as you know, regarding jobs, careers, and so on. So we need to be careful about people who make momentary snap judgments over generalizations, stereotypes, try to apply them to us. And again, this often happens by overly talkative Christians, people who think that you having any sort of wavering, any sort of wondering where God wants you to be in this area, that they have to step right in and make sure that they put you right. And they go to something that they may have heard or something like that. So this, I think that "It's Your Gift" scam. It's something that we call in information technology an anti-pattern, and in information technology it's called an Athena. And the picture of how this comes to you is that you have this gift, and it magically comes out with music, books, thoughts, things like that from within you, that you've been given some sort of gift. And it's like um, the goddess Athena. Someone's expected to enter a new job, a new career, fully formed by their previous experiences, even very small experiences. And the anti pattern, which I'll put a note in the comments about where to find it. When this happens on a large scale, it says this locks people in the roles they've already performed. The opportunity to move on and learn new skills is limited. All learning is presumed to have occurred previously, and unfortunately, it locks people into things that they may be doing, may have done just simply as an adjunct to whatever skill set they've been trying to put together. So the underlying delusion is an over focus on and reckless words about vaguely and superficially defined talents. Talent development. It's people who are thinking they can spot someone's talent based on some little thing that they may have seen them doing. A hyper focus on one little ability, one little capability, and something which they may be totally unsuited to as far as a job, a career, so on. And I faced that when I face people with that, they think that what they see me do right now is all I ever can be or will be. And that my own ideas, my own thoughts, or maybe some of those, my own prayers, that doesn't matter. They spotted a talent. And you need to follow that talent because they spotted it and they're right and you're wrong and you need to follow that talent. Well, why in the world would anyone have a seminary then if all you need to have is God given gift and talent? I went to seminary in the first place to develop myself in ministry. And if a seminary thinks that you should have all the talents, all the capabilities, everything before you come there, find another seminary. Any place which looks at you have to have that talent and they're not going to try to work with you. And if they don't like you, they'll say you don't have the talent. Find a place that would work with you. Case Western Reserve, I took some classes at the Weatherhead School of Management. And they were also focused on developing practical skills such as presentation, negotiation, and so on. And I did take the course which was mentioned in the emotional intelligence books, Daniel Goleman, Management 403, Managerial Development, Assessment and Development, and they came to the conclusion after looking at me for the course of a semester that I did have the capability to be a good manager, but as it turned out over time, I didn't have the incentive, the motivation to be, so I kept up with information technology, and I didn't want to manage people. But it's too easy for people to focus on one little thing they might have thought you did and try to make that the call of your life when they have neither the wisdom, the authority, nor even the common sense to do that. So, just being on, you find this in churches and some people in life too. I had to deal with 4 delusions along this way and became an unnecessary weight of expectations which I never chose, and the people who may speak on this didn't speak for me, and we confuse natural talents also in the church often. Natural talents from the way that we're created with spiritual gifts, which come from the Holy Spirit, which come when we're converted, when the Holy Spirit comes to dwell within us. So I had to deal with a delusion when someone came up with the idea that I was the wrong career path. Even though I'd spent hours in the Bible, prayer, and prior to that, up to that point, there were well-grounded and sensible people who agreed with me. And this also had a delusion that someone who hid in the background had the inside scoop on what I was really called to do. And certainly, there were some doors I had closed to me because of that, and I faced some hardships of a late bloomer, but that was a delusion that someone else had the inside track, the inside scoop on what I was really called to do. That they knew what my talent was, even though I tried that and I hated it. And when someone else thinks that they have the scoop on what your talents really were, they may try to manipulate you behind your back to what their ideas of gift and callings were. But in fact, as I am someone whose intelligence puts me in the high IQ category, gifted and talented. Doesn't mean that I'm the only one that has gifts and talents and no one else does. Polymath, the capability of learning more than one thing. But everyone has different aptitudes, different situations, and there's no one path to follow based on a snap judgment. And along with this came the third delusion that my happiness would come along the path of following their ideas. How fatuous and arrogant that is. That if they were God to tell me such a thing about my future, and this is what we call future faking. Someone's promising you a future which they cannot back up through their knowledge or their capability or understanding. And the delusion was they put across because, yes, I went into pastor following my career path, that my own ideas about my career were childish, immature, and ill-informed, and you can ignore him. He really doesn't know what he's talking about. Same people. I was older, more knowledgeable, more mature they were when they sought their career paths and followed their sense of calling. So if someone tries to play this with you, you may need to squash some rash words, snap judgments, and rumors. Rash words, people who lets their mouth run on something which that can be a sign of an obsession and fixation and some wicked scheme perhaps in their life. We need to be careful while saying anything is the will of God for any other person in any situation, because we're not God. And you had better have an infallible gift of prophecy. Both Greg Laurie and Billy Graham had experiences when someone tried to hold them to leadings from God which they didn't find concurrence with in their own spirits, and later those things that they were claiming leadings from God were falsified through circumstances. But so what I'm saying, and I hope that you're being polite and listening to this, and it doesn't apply to you. But we need to have real scriptural discernment and realism about making predictions about tomorrow. Other people are not able to fathom out the will of God for us. We're called to test all things, realize that God is right, and that the thoughts, words, and perceptions and actions of men and women with feet of clay may turn out to be wrong and misleading. We're to live in prayer, to be people of wisdom, to live in gentleness and love. We're to get firm scriptural and gentle counsel. And if a person isn't living according to the qualifications of elders, deacons, and deaconesses is given in 1 Timothy and Titus, we may see that there's a person there who is being divisive, and you can actually divide churches and others by this. So, and if this involves a call to ministry, I think that we often have an over spiritualized understanding of the call of ministry. Yes, God does lead. Yes, we do know that we're called to ministry for oneself or others. Our sufficiency will be in God, not in ourselves, not in our background, not in our family, and character and knowledge of the Word and prayer shows that God is behind that and wants us to be sharing. So, coming now to more the general advice, no matter what your situation, concentrate on your set of skills, skill stack, as Scott Adams put it. I would encourage you to read his book, How to Win Bigly. Some very sound advice there. Whatever your own or anyone else's estimate of your personal gifts or employment track, seek to learn skills. This right now we'll go to John D. Rockefeller. Lived in the Cleveland area where I live, and I'm reading his biography right now, finding it. I know a lot of the places where he frequented, sometimes walked on the same streets and so on, and so. But this verse 29, Proverbs chapter 22, verse 29, was one of his favorite verses. Do you see a man skillful in his work? He will stand before kings. He will not stand before obscure men. And that's one of the verses he used to motivate himself to learn the skills. He wasn't a scientist, although he worked with scientists as far as refining and oil. He was extremely well versed in arithmetic and bookkeeping. That was his original education. he could recognize a business opportunity, go toward that very quickly, and he did have very much with the people who he was employed work with a strong manager and dealt with them compassionately, ethically, and apparently, from what I know, it would have been very nice to have been one of the employees with John D. Rockefeller because he was a very conscientious Christian man, according to what I can tell. What I can tell from the biography so far is that people talked about his tactics in dealing with the competitors. Well, as far as I'm telling, the competitors really, um, they weren't always that bright, that good, and Rockefeller was very lenient, and very often, even if he was acquiring their firms, it was a win-win situation, a better situation they would have had than if their firm would have failed. But that's so far. So consider your skill set. Consider your skill stack. It can make you, if you're skillful in your work, it bring you forward in your career, in your job. And skills can be learned, and they can be taught. It's not about having some mystical, inscrutable passion and instant geysers of ability and productivity from hidden talents, which suddenly someone discovers. And it's not like over the years I played the trombone. It takes a lot of practice and a lot of understanding. And you don't put a trombone up to someone's lips and they instantly become Bill Walters. Bill Walters, one of the most accomplished jazz trombonists, or Christian Lindbergh, one of the most accomplished classical trombonists. They don't become these people just the moment they put the mouthpiece up to their lips. And that's the way skills are. There may be talent and aptitudes, but they need to be developed over time. And I put a plug in here for Christian classical education. Christian classical education, as far as I can tell, builds polymaths, people who have a multitude of aptitudes that are developed from their time they're in school age. They have the basis of a strong skill set and a strong skill stack, wide variety of potential, and some of the basic skills that people may get. And Christian classical education builds these skills and also character from elementary school. And I'm not sure that how much that modern education really deals with them. Technical skills. It's people who may learn to code from an early age. Well, yeah, we're going to still need to figure out coding and understand coding. We can't have AI doing it all for us. A lot of the stuff that AI comes up with is simply repeats and code which other we used to call them code sniglets, where people would grab a bit of code from someone else and adapt that. People skills, ethical persuasion, that's been a part of a basic skills stack for generations, from the time of Plato at least. There were characters called sophists like Gorgias, almost went into the Greek pronunciation, who would teach that, and Aristotle and Plato put that on an ethical persuasion basis, not a chance of trying to overwhelm people with your rhetoric to get them to consider good evil or evil good. Languages too, grammar, knowing your own language, another language. Still, Latin is still a very gateway to learning other languages, especially European languages. Math, that arithmetic, and going on to algebra, calculus, and so on, geometry, is crucial to making a big mark to be able to have these type of skills. That's one of the aptitudes you can see from Plato. Yeah, Plato. He had an aptitude for math. He was into geometry and like that. Isaac Newton. Yeah. John D. Rockefeller. Yeah. He could look at a ledger of figures and find out the one which had an error pretty much from sight, and that's a rare gift. Elon Musk. Yeah. So learning math, what do you want to be? If math is part of that, that's a skill you can bring up. Drawing, being able to draw, is another skill I think which is underemphasized. And there are two examples I'll bring up. They're not the nicest people from history, but Otto von Bismarck. He There's an envelope which he had. We're just waiting for an appointment, which he drew the picture of a German warship, the cruiser that he was considering. It's actually a good drawing. He could draw well. Part of what was taught, one of the skills. Erwin Rommel, General Rommel from World War II. Again, he problematic because of his loyalty to history or loyalty to Hitler, but when he was trying to develop the defenses of the western, what they call the Western Wall, the beaches of France and so on, he could draw out exactly what he wanted. And I think even if I were to put, if I remember correctly, Steven Spielberg, when he was doing, I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark for the umpteenth time again last night on TV, and a lot of those scenes, there was a drawing which went down first to draw what they were trying to capture in that scene. It's part of the storyboard. So drawing is often underrated as a gateway skill, not necessarily to become the world's greatest artist. Reading is something habitual. Productive and accomplished people read a lot and a lot of things. When I first went into information technology, I discovered that most people in information technology don't even read one manual a year. I made it my goal to read a manual a month. If you're going to be productive and accomplished, you're going to keep up with reading. Or some other capabilities also. Physical strength and endurance. Even if you're not in a physical job, that can be helpful. But if you're in a physical job, yeah, develop strength from an early age. Learn how to be strong. Sports, if they're developing strength and endurance, that can translate into a lot of other non-sport jobs. Being able to diagnose problems too, remain calm under pressure. John D. Rockefeller, again, he was known for that when a crisis came, he was the calmest person in the room, and he usually had the right thing to do. And he was proactive, we call that proactive, and he would address problems quickly, decisively. I think that his speed and decisiveness was a large part of his success. He could outspeed and make decisions, the right decisions, earlier than the competitors. I think the people hated him for that. Being able to work independently and a team player also. And along with reading, self-study, personal research, being able to keep your skills relevant, and videos, conferences, and so on. So you can accomplish things in work, be real and a growing enjoyment, and not for, and we don't need to live our lives for entertainment. Entertainment should be a distraction to renew our strength, not the center of our lives, not to live in luxury, not to try to be better than others, but real accomplishments, actual accomplishments, and they'll build up real self-confidence in our lives. Something that doesn't come from pumping ourselves up in self-hype, but from someone who's actually done things, accomplished things, and can say what they did and how they did it and why they did it and what you need to know to do that. So as you get a skill stack, you'll get an accomplishment portfolio. And I encourage you to document that. If you have a resume, that should be documented. Not what you think you can do, but also what you've accomplished. And certainly, there will be times that we have Early in our careers, transitional jobs were used to pay our living and learning expenses, develop a work ethic. But career progression comes through building up that skill stack, skill set, getting a portfolio of accomplishments which are documented, which you can point to. So, also along the way, there's going to be stress you're going to have to deal with. Very often, it's only temporary. There are going to be crises from time to time. If it's extreme, it can become a real detriment to health. You may need to consider to get out of a situation where this type of extreme stress is designed as part of the job, and routines and requirements. Some jobs, as you start to get in, it may not be upfront with demands for weekends and extra hours. And some places have a weird idolatry of extra hours and weekend work, even if they're not productive at all. And often that becomes a political gambit where someone, let's say that our department is putting in extra hours, we're working on weekends, and that's how seriously we're taking this, even though they're not being more productive, even though they're not accomplishing the project what they said. So one of the strangest personal contacts I ever made was a man by the name of Carl Bull. I met him as he was dying, and he wrote a little book years ago. He's part of the um, Harvard Business School contacts there. He wrote a little book called Executive Jobs Unlimited. Well, that book became the basis of another book in transition, and that became the basis of another book. What color is your parachute? Oh yeah, Alan Bowles. What color is your parachute? And it talks about your skill set, skill stack, potential goals, interests, and so on. And understanding that, okay, you got the skill stack, you got the skill set, you got your accomplishments, so that you're not begging someone for a job, but selling your skills and experience to the highest bidder. So that you're looking at interviews not as begging for a job. You can ask for it certainly if you think I can fit in, I can do this, and I can make a contribution. But to a certain extent, each job offer is a bid for your valuable time and services. And you can increase that value over time. And there are things like giving a cover letter and informational interview, which can help you to find that. And along the way, also, ask others about the work they're doing. There's an old term about that you'll find called an informational interview, but don't use that term. Just simply talk to others about their work. Ask questions first. Don't understand. You understand someone else's work and employment, even if you know someone in the same general area. Don't act as if you know better than they do what they're doing. Big mistake. And it often happens in casual conversations, but ask them. And ask them how they grew into that. If someone has a long work history, ask them how they came to that. Ask them how they developed their skill set. And recognize when you deal with people, yeah, there is real career progression. One of the strange things that happened to me was I was being asked to participate in something to do with the ministry, and spent years as a software architect, and came to be a fairly high job level. Well, that's why they wanted me. Well, they wanted me there for data entry. Excuse me? I can do it. But you got high school kids who can do that. So it's not that I'm above that. It's about being about a servant following Jesus, but seeking out someone career progression at that point for data entry. Maybe could have been something like saying, "Well, I know that We are looking for people to do this. If you could chip in, that would be fine. We know that you're overqualified for that or something like that. But that was one of the strangest things that anyone ever asked me to do. So, again, I talked to people about their work, asked about the decisions, what they had to learn, what they had to do, what their accomplishments are, and develop diligence to keep on going, personal responsibility, and if someone else has advanced skills and accomplishments, nothing was done upon that path to stick it to you. They did that not to incite envy, but to provide for themselves and their families and so on. So people can get secure with people who have been on a career path for a long time and have developed some real accomplishments, some real attainments, some real abilities. So skill enhancement, you can grow a skill stack. You can grow expertise way beyond entry level. So I want to caution you, make sure that if someone's trying to pigeonhole you to one thing when you in fact have a variety of skills, take and continue on your own path. And if you take a path which is alternative to what they have trying to pigeonhole into, build your own alternative skill set, keep on going on your own employment and your own career paths, your own structures and your systems. Leave that person behind. And of course, I'm a believer here, and God's will and the way of the Holy Spirit, it's entirely compatible with following Jesus in your life and your career. And people shouldn't be trying to interfere with that, hijack you, sidetrack you, make you, and trick you into doing something else. But follow Jesus, work to be skillful, show your skills, glorify God. And thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention.